Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Maritime Software Hub, the People Podcast. My name's Callum Beaumont, the host of the show and the founder of Cordell Beaumont. Today I'm really excited to be joined by Robert Hansen, who's the Chief Commercial Officer of CIT. And we're going to discuss the topic of harmonizing and standardizing maritime IT. So Robert, thank you very much for joining us, and I'd love it if you could perhaps introduce yourself and tell a bit about what you do.
Thank you very much, Callum, for having me here. It's exciting. Yes, as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for CIT. Basically, what we do is we standardize and operate IT infrastructure on board, mostly merchant vessels, but we do also do other types of vessels. And I mean, it's a way of operating services to bring down cost, to increase security and basically increase productivity on the digital side of shipping.
Okay, excellent, good, and I think it's a really key discussion to look at this sort of process of kind of standardization, especially when there's a number and an increased kind of amount of players in the maritime technology space. So it'd be really interesting to hear your insights from you as a technology point of view, but also what you're seeing perhaps from the ship owners and the end users as well. So looking forward to discussing that. So can you perhaps give I know you touched upon it there, but a bit of a deeper overview of CIT and the sort of different areas of the business?
Yeah, I mean, basically the area of the business is IT, digitalization, integration of functionality on board vessels. So this spans over a lot of areas, but you could say that our main task is to keep an eye on and operate the digital backbone of a vessel. So keeping a solid hand over, whatever functionalities they have on board, applications, making sure they are running properly, making sure everything is up to date, everything is harmonized on the fleet in general, and making sure that we are, secure. That's and we have, high availability. That's basically what we do.
Okay, and what overall, what sort of challenges are you kind of helping kind of ship owners or other kind of players in the market solve, do you think?
I mean, with the increased regulations and compliance that ship owners has to follow today, there's a lot to keep track of, and if you can bring someone on that will harmonize and standardize that part of your business so that you can focus on actually doing what you're supposed to do, bringing the vessel from A to B, there's a lot of wins to do on that side, not only economical, but every company today wants to stay in the game is going to do that by basically digitalizing their business somehow, and to be able to do that, you need a basic core foundation, and the core foundation is basically what we deliver, and make sure it's there, it's running properly, and so they can operate and do business on top of that, and also be very flexible and bring in new functionality quickly, fleet-wide, and not spending a lot of time and money on trying to differentiate or do digital things differently.
Okay, that might have answered my next question, but in layman's terms, in terms of standardization and harmonization, what does that mean to you? Like, what does that actually involve when it comes to the different technology kind of areas of tech?
I mean, for us, it's a matter of taking care of whatever they need to have on board. So it comes down from basically getting along with the top management of any company, and trying to figure out how do you want to run your business, where do you see yourself in 5 years, what are we going to facilitate for, so we need to basically produce a platform that will be able to handle their business for the next 5, 6, or even sometimes longer. And to do that, we need to be in agreement on a lot of things. And so it needs to come from top management that, this is the way we're going to conduct our digital business, and this is how we're going to grow in the future in this company. And then we kind of get in and standardize as much as we can when it comes to how do we handle software, how do we handle security, which hardware do we deliver to the vessels, and what do we allow, what do we do and don't allow, and of course business comes first, but crew is also a big part of what any shipping company today is doing. So it's a matter of balancing everything at the same time and having everything looking the same everywhere.
Okay, thank you. No, that makes sense. And I guess what are some of the risks associated with not having kind of standardization across the technology?
The risks of not doing it, then you lose flexibility. You probably lose track on a lot of security issues. You most certainly lose track of how much money you spend on IT, for example, because with our approach, you can be sure to keep track of how much money you're spending on IT and kind of look at IT as something that you invest in instead of seeing it as a cost only. For many ship owners, that's the case today. They look at it as a cost, as a necessity, but never something that would bring money back to the company or actually bring you business in the end. So I would say that the risks are many, but certainly, of course, in the security area today, everybody is vulnerable because we're doing a lot of digital things on board vessels.
Okay, understood. All right, thank you. And I guess going forward then, how do you see perhaps the next sort of 3 to 5 years or so looking in terms of the maritime technology sort of space?
We are already entered what I would call some kind of new era when it comes to digitalizations in this world. Obviously, fuel performance, fuel consumption and the performance and optimization of routes and planning is something that is, kind of low-hanging fruits. But if you want to digitize it, then you need, of course, to have a lot of sensor data, and you need to be able to rely on that data. So I would say that apart from seeing a lot of more smart applications helping us out in the day-to-day business, I would say that a lot of the data being produced by actually propulsing a vessel forward will come into play to save money in the future and also save on, of course, the environment. But I think that's where we're heading. And of course, with communication and technology, and we see high speed satellites today, more and more coming into play, and that is for sure be a standard in the next couple of years, and with that there will be a lot more cloud hosting, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. And you're based in Sweden, is that right? Your team are all based there at the moment?
Yeah. We are at one location only, so we're about 45 people hosting and taking care of about. In this day today, we are around 360 vessels, I think.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So would your team members fly out and go visit the vessels at port and help set up the technology there, or does the crew typically do it themselves?
No, when we roll out a system on board a vessel, we do it for the next 5 to 6 years. So we only do one visit on board the vessels for those 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
So we roll out a totally redundant system on board the vessel. So basically, we're monitoring everything, every functionality that's available in that's necessary to monitor in the IT system. And with that, we can basically exclude 90% of the issues being presented, for the crew on board. So they basically never see what's going on with the ITC system in the background. And if we have, for example, something, crucial breaking down, like a server or a switch or something like that, we can just send out a new one and ask the crew to replace it. So, our main focus is to only visit vessels once we roll out a new system, and we do that within, 25 to 30 hours for one vessel. So we usually do it in operation somehow.
Okay, excellent. And would your team interact with the different technology companies directly, or you just speak to the kind of the ship owners and the ship managers, and the technology companies speak directly to the ship owners? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So when we engage in a new customer, it's typically a couple of vessels or a fleet of vessels, and then we kind of do a project on how everything's going to look in the end. And typically any merchant vessels today, if you take, for example, a tanker, they might have somewhere in the area of 70 to 120 software applications on board that they use on a daily basis somehow. So we kind of need to box those together and take care of those. And many times we already have some sort of partnerships with these companies in the background. We know them, we know how their software works, but the whole idea is to be able to remote control every software and version handlings and all this in the background without having all these different suppliers being the ones logging on to the system all the time. So we can do that centrally from our works here in Sweden, and make sure that we're always secure and up and running.
Brilliant. Okay, great. All right then. So I guess before we move on to the next section of the discussion, which I try and like to learn a bit more about our guests and their kind of career and journey and things. But is there anything else you'd like to discuss or run through about CIT or the topic of standardization?
Well, I mean, we've been at it for about 23 years now, so we're kind of old in the game, and we can see that our approach is being asked for more and more. So I think that we've been on a path for a long time, trying to standardize the setup and trying to work in a certain way, which made us we were very early when it comes to adopting security in the way that today is actually demanded. We've been doing that for a long time, and then of course you can always argue the bits and pieces been missing and stuff like that, but we've always been on top of it, and we've always been early adapters when it comes to how to handle security on board. So I think it's important to remember that we've been doing this for a long time, and we've been ahead of most compliance and regulations for a very long time. Doing this is in a kind of industry grade standard for a very long time.
Yeah, and I think that gives people a lot of confidence. I think especially in the modern day, there are a number of kind of new businesses kind of popping up, and some have been around for a couple of years, and I think it's very powerful to have that kind of track record and case studies, I'm sure, and a number of recommendations and things I'm sure you've developed over the years, which I think would be really key, especially if you're the one that's going to be kind of overseeing the whole umbrella of the technology piece.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I think it's also important to mention, that we are a very niche company, so we are only working together. We are only in the maritime business. We don't do land-based companies at all. So, and people tend to forget that, the maritime business is very special for that reason of ships moving and the flexibility that needs to be on our side, on the land side. And we have, our whole company is based on the knowledge of shipping, so that gives us a lot of advantage, I think, when it comes to working with these kind of customers.
And how is the Swedish shipping market? And a bit of a broad question, but we don't do too much, to be honest with you, too much recruitment in Sweden. We work with companies in Finland in particular, and Norway and Denmark, and obviously the UK and Greece and things, but in Sweden not so much. So how is the kind of the general kind of maritime landscape there?
I'm probably not the right person to speak for all of Swedish maritime market, but I think we're doing quite all right these days. I think that I'm based in an area which is the history of shipping goes a long way back. We've always built ships here. We always developed a lot of things around the maritime industry and shipping, and we are still a lot of people in this town. Gothenburg, a city of around 600,000 people, where close to 10% of the people are somehow involved in the maritime business or shipping somehow. So and we have a lot of shipping companies based here in Gothenburg as well, on the tanker side, and of course on the ferry side as well. But I would say we're doing quite all right in Sweden. We're a small country, but and we're obviously not Denmark when it comes to shipping, but we're doing better day by day. I would say we've been down and coming up again.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you very much. So, I mean, how did you first get into this business? Like, what was it kind of, I guess, sort of attracted you to kind of shipping technology? And was there some other kind of like previous connection to maritime at all?
I mean, I grew up with, I'm sure many young boys have the dream of going to sea. I grew up with that. I grew up with that dream, and I made it. I realized it in '99 when I was around 22 years old. So I went to sea, working for a cruise company. Before that, when I was in high school, I've been working for a few local maritime companies. Just on the side when going to school. So I went to sea for a cruise company, spent about 5 years working with provisions. So I think that period of my life, I was fairly young, kind of fostered me to be the professional and individual, and gave me trademarks, the ones I have today. Yeah. And I mean, many of those being in that, kind of luxury industry environment, you are forced to teach yourself about attention to details and standards, and have a good overview. Being a manager, you really need to be on top of things all the time, and not only taking care of daily business. You also have the security perspective of working on a vessel. Either you're part of a fire team or you're part of some kind of rescue boat team or whatever, and you always need to be on for that as well. So yeah. Awesome. I spent about 5 years. Came back on land in 2004, and I started working for a maritime tech company here in Gothenburg that specialized in communications and bridge equipment. Yeah. And this was right about when VSAT was coming out, so I got to see a little bit of the older stuff, Satcom B and stuff like this, and then I got along this VSAT train really early. So now I spent a little bit more than 20 years in maritime technology, sales, procurement, service and support management, and these last 7 years I spent here in the IT world, more on the operational side, but also in general management, growing CIT to what it is today. And been a part of that. And today I focus a lot on market and sales.
Yeah.
So that's simply explained.
No, interesting. Awesome. Yeah. No, and I was going to ask that because you've obviously, if we just kind of look at your profile, you've been in different roles, as you mentioned, operations, and now perhaps a mix of operations and sales.
Yeah.
Can you just for our listeners, maybe perhaps that are either kind of climbing up the career ladder and keen to kind of progress into either a C-suite role or a strategic role, what would you say the main differences are in between a chief operating officer role and then obviously a chief commercial role? What are the fundamental differences?
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental businesses between those two roles, I would say that on a daily basis, as a chief operating officer, you need to be involved in everything operational. You need to be on the floor. You need to be, widespread, going through your organization. There's a lot of, people care. There's a lot of system care. There's a lot of, having your eye on the economics, having your eye on production, having your eye on basically anything that has to do with the product in the end. On the commercial side, for me at least, it tends to be that you have to turn your head around a little bit when it comes to being operational. You have to be a little bit more creative. You now have to think about, steps ahead, and really, really put your head into who's a good fit for us and who should I talk to and who should I approach, to see if we can start a partnership in the future. But it's also on how we want to be perceived as a company in the world, because obviously we've been around for a long time, but we're also not the company, that has the highest volume of vessels, because we prioritize quality a lot, and we prioritize relations a lot, and we prioritize being with our customers for a long time. When we engage, we don't look at it short time at all. I mean, our contracts might be short term, but we never aim for short term contracts. We aim for a partnership that should last for a very, very long time. So I think that's the difference between the two roles, and I think also that we as a company are, as I said before, we are a niche company. There's it's hard to compare us to anything else, I would say, in the world, because we're on a special market, and we do things the way we do it, and we do it. People will say maybe in an odd way, but when you look at the long-term outcome, it makes sense. It makes total sense what we do.
Yeah, that's really interesting. To be honest with you, I think we're a similar approach to our recruitment business. Is we don't try and chase every single vacancy and try and work with every single client. We want to try and build that long-term partnership, as you mentioned, and hopefully have a more of a strategic relationship. And that's that really makes sense. All right then. So I think for now, I really enjoyed the conversation, and it's good to learn a bit more about your role. But I guess outside of work, when you get a moment, but what type of things do you like to get up to, sort of hobby wise, and obviously if you have family and that type of thing?
Yeah, I put myself in a situation where I'm like now at my fourth house.
Okay.
And spending my time renovating that house.
Wow.
So I kind of made a promise to myself the other day that, if I move again, I will buy something turnkey. So now I spend a lot of time, doing carpentry at home. I like anything on two wheels, bikes, motorbikes, so when I get some time for that, I love to do that. Love to go out on a boat usually have a boat, not right now, but going boating is also something that I enjoy a lot. But most of my free time is spent renovating.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, we have a buy-to-let property, which I didn't personally do it up, but I really enjoyed being involved, kind of overseeing the projects and things, and that was a couple of years ago. But I think it's nice to have that, seeing something from the beginning to the end, and especially if you're doing it yourself, must be very, very rewarding. It
is rewarding. I would say, I mean, it's a substitute for maybe going to the gym or getting some physics done, but I would say it's really rewarding. And of course, I mean, work environments today are more administrative and sitting down, being still all day, so you need to get energy out there somehow. Yeah, good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for speaking, Robert. I really enjoyed the conversation. And obviously, if people would like to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do so, or maybe learn a bit more about the business? Yeah, I mean, we have a web page. Our web page is kind of self-explanatory, cit.com. And you can find all of our crew there. You can find me there. You can also find direct emails to our sales channel. You can definitely learn a lot more of us on our web page. And I'm on LinkedIn. You'll find me there, Robert Hansen. And I will answer anyone who reaches out to me and wants to talk about, the intent about maritime IT or anything else that has to do with our company directly.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining the show. And obviously, thank you to everyone for listening and tuning in. Really enjoyed this discussion. And take care, Robert. And hope to speak again soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Pleasure.